All right, so today, December 20th, 2019, we are going to be chatting all about blogging. So let me share my screen. I'm going to make sure this time that you can actually see it as I'm flipping through the slides.
Okay.
So blogging is an important sort of tool in business. So things I want to cover today are reasons to blog, creating a content calendar, frequency and sharing, so how often and how to share it, titles, and how to write a great blog post. So we'll go through each one of these and then we'll go to questions. So reasons to blog. So here's some quick stats. There are 409 million monthly readers of over 2.2 billion blog posts. So people are reading them. There are different ways to consume content. Some people are vlogging, so they're doing videos and then transcribing them. Some people are writing them. But ultimately, it's a great way for you to get in front of your audience. And this is estimated to just continue to grow. Obviously, these are some US stats, and that's relevant for you, Craig, for sure. People who have blogged typically gain 66% more leads. So that's because they're visible, right? So it's visibility plays a huge part in blogging. And then over 57% said that blogging gave them new customers. So while there's not always a direct ROI for blogging or marketing, it increases your visibility and allows people to see you, remember you, and typically people need to see you 6 to 8 times before they will buy from you. So it's really important to be visible and for people to have that repetition. And when you have a great visual brand and you're consistent with the way you display that on social media and on your blog, then you'll be more recognizable to people. So the goals of blogging are typically you want to increase your website traffic. And I've got a slide showing you sort of how my traffic increases every time I blog. So the post I put out yesterday, I had 4 times as many people on my website yesterday than I did on the day before. So typically there's always a huge spike in traffic. So that's good for Google, that's good for the search engines. When they see people going to your website, that's really good for you. So you want to make sure that you're leading people to your website. It allows you to share your thought leadership on your subject, your area of expertise. So if you're an expert in something and you're sharing your position on something, then you're seen as a leader. You want to come out strong with some really great opinions, and we'll chat a bit more about that. It's about increasing awareness and visibility. As I said, ultimately sharing your thought leadership and building that awareness so that people see you and they can connect with you and get to know you. Then, when they are ready or need what you do, you'll be top of mind. And it also is to convert your email list subscribers and website traffic into paying clients. So if you think about all those people that come to your website or sign up for your email list, you're emailing out to your blog, you're hoping that a percentage of those people will eventually buy from you or sign up for your products or services. So let's talk a bit about content calendar. Just going to double check something here. Okay. So these are the things that I want you to, and I can share this in the group, so you don't necessarily have to take notes, but you want to make a list of all the things that your clients are struggling with. What are their challenges? What are their struggles? And then I want you to make a list of the questions you get asked frequently, those things that come up every time, right? So it's about listening to when people call you or have questions. What are those things that are being asked over and over again? And you'll find a pattern in there. And then make a list of things you have a really strong opinion on, because that matters. That's how you get known. And then also a list of things you're just an expert in. So the expert in is, and I'll dive into that a little bit deeper, you might have a strong opinion on your area of expertise or something just to do with something that you're really passionate about. And then your expertise would be creating a how-to. This is how you do this effectively, right? So that's sort of the definition, how I'm defining a strong opinion versus something that you're an expert in. So if you can make a list of 12 topics related to these things, so once you've fleshed out all of these lists, you can come up with kind of a topic or theme that you can have one per month for the next 12 months. So ultimately, it helps you create a 12-month marketing calendar. So I'm going to walk you through mine. So these are ones, and I may move around some of them, but I looked at all of the challenges my clients have, things that I have a really strong opinion on or an expertise in. And so I've created a topic for each month of 2019. And then I'm going to dive deeper into each one of those. But ultimately, everything I post, whether it's a blog or it's social media content, video, whatever it is, January is all going to be around visibility. And then February will be all around social media. So you can see that you can create some themes for each month. So let's dive a little bit deeper into January. So I've laid this out, and I'm happy to provide sort of a spreadsheet or something with all of this so you can work on it yourself. So the expert position, if I look at January for visibility, that's my how to do it. So I'm going to give my top visibility tips. And so in this document, I've just given some high level kind of bullet points about creating high quality content, optimizing your images, using authentic images. Sure. So those are sort of some things I can pull together a list of my tips for small businesses for visibility, right? Then I'm going to look at strong opinion. So what I think visibility should look like for all entrepreneurs. So that's my strong opinion around this. Then I'm going to look at a case study. So I'm going to take one of my clients who's doing really, really well with her visibility. And that's my client, Jordan Wiggins. So these are all things that I've actually started fleshing out for myself. So I'm going to showcase her personal brand, her business brand, her social media. She's writing a book. She's got an online program. She's kind of got all of the things that she's doing right. And she's very visible online and is building a really good name for herself. Then I'm going to, share how I felt when I started working on visibility and things that I struggled with. So kind of that personal, bit more of a vulnerability side of things. I'm going to talk about teaching from your scars and not from your wounds, video, perfectionism, finding the time, all those things that I've personally struggled with. I will write a post around that. And then I'll look at somebody, a big name, and somebody who I think is doing it really right. And so for me, Lady Gaga, right? She's okay with being controversial. She knows who she is, and she's like very clear on that. And she's okay with not being liked by everybody. She's created a massive group of raving fans. So she has her group, people that follow her, and she's branded them, she's named them. And they love her, and she's, she knows she's not for everybody, and she's okay with that. So there's a lot of things I think that she's doing right from a visibility standpoint. So that's how I've kind of broken up that, what am I an expert in, the opinion piece, looking at a case study because people like to see our clients' work. So we'll share that. Now, I'm not going to write 5 blog posts necessarily in January. That's not usually how prolific I am. We'll get into frequency. So some of these might just be a social media post because I post more on social media than I blog. So I'm posting daily. So then I'll take each one of these and I'll break them down into, can I create a week's worth of content on my social media all around my visibility tips, right? So I can do that for sure. My opinion piece, case study. So I can take each one of these and turn them into daily content for my social media, as well as maybe creating 1 to 2 blog posts a month. I think that's all I can manage. There's different opinions on frequency, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. So frequency. So there's weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. I don't think blogging daily. I mean, I think some people do it. I don't think any of us are probably in the position to do that, and that's okay. I've aimed for monthly this year. I did miss a few months, but you want to kind of create that predictability. If you're gone for too long, people will forget you. So, and like I said, if you're blogging, that will increase your the eyeballs on your website. So let's say you go with monthly. I think if you're just starting out, I wouldn't attempt more than that unless you know you can dedicate the time to it and stick to it. Because you don't want to start off and do January, February, March, April bi-weekly or monthly, and then you don't post again for 6 months, right? So I'd rather you post once a month than say I'm going to post weekly or bi-weekly, and then you peter off after a few months. So here's that screenshot of I went into my analytics, and so you can see all of those big spikes in my traffic. Those are all days that I blogged. But it's not just about the blog post itself, it's about the fact that I then shared it on all of my social media. So you can't just write a blog post and think that people are going to, actually go and find it, right? So you want to create things that people might be searching for, and then you come up. We get a lot of traffic directly through our blog posts. So somebody might be searching for, let me think about an example. I did a blog post about the Raptors with the Raptors branding after they won the championship, or just before it, because I thought, people might actually be, I posted about the evolution of the Raptors brand. I thought that might be something people might search for. So that would be good from a searchability standpoint. Or I gave sort of trends in top branding trends for 19 or social media trends. People Google things like that. So it can be important to kind of take a look at your industry and go, what are people actually searching for when they're searching for somebody that does what I do? And you can create some content around that as well. So ultimately, like I said, you want to write the blog post, but if nobody knows it exists, nobody is going to read your blog post. So you have to share it. You have to start building up an email list. MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, ConvertKit, those are some different platforms for building an email list. In order to do that, you need to have a lead magnet, some kind of free download. I'll cover that in a future training so we can get more into that. Ultimately, when I started building my list, I had about 70 people on it a few years ago. Now I've got almost 800. And that's giving away something, getting people to sign up for something, speaking, consultations, things like that. So it can take some time to build it up, but ultimately, every time I write a blog post, I share that with my list and have them go check out my website, which also increases the traffic on the site. Then you want to share it through your social media. So your Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I see LinkedIn I love, words that aren't typical. They get misspelled. I was trying to type one yesterday and it kept trying to change it for me. Anyway, that should say LinkedIn. Twitter, whichever platforms you're on and use, it's about sharing that content on those platforms. So as an example, yesterday I shared my blog post, my email list. I shared it on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then today I broke down and actually created a new post with just a piece of content from that blog post. So there's ways to take your blog post and kind of chop it up into different pieces of content that you can use. Then there's also groups. So Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups that you can be a part of. Now, they don't always like you to share content that takes people away. Like a lot of groups don't want you selling in there. But if you're just writing a really great opinion piece, it can be a really great place to share your knowledge and expertise in a completely non-salesy way, because you may get kicked out of those groups if you do that. But if you share on Facebook and LinkedIn, you find those groups where your clients hang out, then it's a great opportunity to share that with a new audience. And, things like social media and in the groups, the more people that comment and share, the better. So if you can encourage people to share it with their network, get those comments, then it gets in front of more eyeballs. Ultimately, we want to use blogging to increase the awareness and visibility. Any questions so far?
Not yet.
No yet? Okay.
No, but I think that if some of the worksheets that you had at the very beginning are available, those would be good.
Yeah, so I've got sort of a rough one. So I'll create something and I'll make sure that everybody gets that, because I think just to start to build out your own, even if we just create it in an Excel spreadsheet or, Google Sheets or something, that's how I started it, was just kind of doing that brain dump around the topics and looking at creating that content calendar and then building out from there, like the different pieces. I think that'd be really important. So titles of your blog posts are really important because you've got to compel people to read what you've written. So there's a couple of different ways to write headlines. There's more than this, but I'm going to give two examples. One is the how-to, right? How to something, how to be something, how to, so let's look at some examples. How to, it could be something like, for me, how to brand your business in 10 minutes. I don't know. I don't think that's possible, but how to
communicate.
Right. Yeah. How to communicate like a boss, right? That'd be a good one.
Or how to communicate your brand in under a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What would be a good one for you? That's a how-to.
It would be how to communicate how I can help, as opposed to what type of case.
Mm-hmm. How about how to communicate with your lawyer without something? Right? Like that could be an interesting one, because I think people sometimes maybe struggle with lingo, law lingo. So how to understand, law jargon in 10 minutes, right? And give them, or actually this one might be a better. So a list headline, right? So, the top 10 law terms that you need to know.
Right.
7 steps to something, right? So you can see that, and again, I'll share these lists. If you can think about your headlines in these ways, and there's other styles, but the how-to and the list, if you write it in an easy to digest way, like step 1 headline, and then you give some tips, and step 2 and headline and give some, that will really help people you want to make it easy to read. And I'll go through that a little bit too. You want to make a headline that somebody wants to read, because they're inundated with information and people have really short attention spans. So if you can create a really compelling headline, there's a greater chance people will want to read what you've written.
Yeah, what I've seen a lot over the holidays from attorneys is that they're saying, 5 things to keep you safe over the holidays, right? Because even though, things that we do involves cases where there's injuries, if we could prevent injuries, that's great.
Yeah. So if, for you, it's a lot of medical malpractice,
Right.
7 things to ask your doctor before your surgery or something, whatever that might be, because that's not about what you do. That's actually trying to prevent them from needing you, which is actually really powerful.
Right. And those would be like the consent cases where somebody said, I didn't consent to that. So I had to have a meaningful conversation.
Right. How to give consent and understand what you're consenting to. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe that could be a how-to, but I think if you can think about all the reasons why somebody come to you, what can you do to actually help them before they need you, because ultimately you can't prevent things from happening to them. But if they see you as somebody who like, oh, he's actually really trying to prevent me from even getting injured, as an example.
Right.
So if they do, they're going to already have trust with you because they feel like you're not out to sell them. You've just been really trying to help them. And now you become the natural choice for them. So I think that could actually be a really powerful things to write.
Okay.
Absolutely. So how to write. So we want to start by crafting that strong title, whatever that might be. Then you want to start with an irresistible introduction. And somebody, there's, different schools of thought on that. Some people like to start with a quote. Some people start with kind of a subheading that is a lead-in from that strong title. Ultimately, you want each sentence to compel people to read the next sentence. So if you can start with something really strong, whether it's a question or a personal story, you've got to catch their attention. It can't be you've got to take that information and make it entertaining as well. If it's just strictly kind of boring, if you've got to inject your personality into it and take the dryness. I mean, even if it's a really dry subject, by adding in your personality, you've a much better chance of them actually reading it. And you want to take them on a hero's journey. So you want to set the stage. You want to share a story. You want to make sure that there's sort of what's the challenge and, what you can do and the outcome as a really great kind of through line through your story. And then you want to make it easy to read. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that. And ultimately, your blog post should always end with a call to action. In fact, most of your social media posts should end with a call to action. So it could be as simple as comment below to let me know, has this ever happened to you? What are your thoughts? What are the steps? Whatever you could just ask them to comment on whatever you've written. You could ask them to share it. You could ask them to sign up for a free consultation. You could ask them to, what have I done? I've had told people about my upcoming event that I'm looking for people to, who's interested in that. An Instagram contest. I was trying to get people to go over to enter the contest. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but ultimately you want to leave them with something to do, whether it's get in touch with you, share it, comment. Those are all things that you want people to be thinking about when they're getting to the bottom of your blog post. If you have a free download, you want them to download that. So those are some things that you want to do. So making your post easy to read, you want to break your post up into short sections with subheadings. And you want to use short paragraphs and short sentences. So now this is slightly different than how we were all taught to write paragraphs. And, if you're writing an essay, when you're writing on social media and you're writing on a blog, you want to almost have like one sentence or more or two sentences per paragraph. So that it's, if people just see like a big chunky paragraph, they're not going to read it. They might read it diagonally. So and that's me. Like if I see a big paragraphs, I probably won't read it. So by creating it with a single sentence and writing it more like you would talk to people, making it very conversational, you'll have a greater chance of people reading your content. So break it down into short paragraphs and sentences and write like you would talk. And that's much more powerful. I started writing more like that a couple of years ago and found I got way more engagement, way more people that I could see were actually reading to the end because they would do something with that call to action, or they were commenting. It resonated more deeply with them. So I could actually see that they were reading it. And then the other thing is using images and pull quotes. So another way to break up your content is to add in like a quote in a bigger text or something so that it kind of breaks up the flow. White space on a blog to me is very important. Lots of space for people's eyes to just kind of read one thing at a time and keep them keep them engaged. It's always best if you can use your own images instead of stock images. We've pulled some great stock images that are kind of fun and eye-catching. But a lot of the sort of typical businessy ones, I see them all the time and I just gloss right over them on platforms like LinkedIn and that, because they're boring and you've seen them a million times. So, you know, I've got one picture, I don't know if you've seen it, where it's a little dog dressed up as in a pig costume. So it's a stock image, but it's very eye-catching. And it's, you know, what I wrote under it was trying to be someone you're not. So, you know, if you're going to use stock images for things like this, because I totally understand that you're not going to always have your own photography for every post. And if you do, I applaud you, because even we don't. But make sure that the photo is compelling, that makes people want to stop and look at that photo and read whatever is with it. So if you can use a combination of great images, pull some quotes, whether they're your own quotes from a client or a famous quote, you know, that's a great way to make your post easy to read. So I pulled an example from my blog. So there's my headline, three key ingredients for business success. So that's the image we used at the top. I used a quote there from Walt Disney, which now my band is over top of it. Right, so I used a famous quote under that one, just for fun. So you can see how all of my, you know, they're mostly 1 to 2 sentences per line, so it makes it much easier to read. Creating some separation, whether it's with a line or I've used these sort of 3 dots, just to create that little bit of extra kind of white space. So you can see the pull quote, the most successful entrepreneurs are authentic, consistent, and visible. I've used a subheading here with authenticity and more text. Really created a lot of those like short 1 sentence lines, right? The ones that get you, the ones that connect with you, the ones that will pay you what you deserve, right? If that was all together, it's still readable, but it's more impactful because it creates more of a pause and it feels much more conversational that way. And then at the end, see, I've got I just kind of took some screenshots of the whole post. You can see I've got, you know, if you're ready to start the conversation about creating an authentic, memorable brand for yourself, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email to get the conversation started. So that's my call to action. And I've even included my email address. So it's super easy. Somebody just has to click on that and send me an email. So I've tied the call to action into the content. It's not jarring. So whatever the call to action is, you want it to be somewhat related to the blog post in general.
Right.
So that's why I've used the sort of, you know, if you're ready to create an authentic, memorable brand, because I'm talking about the authenticity and the visibility and consistency, and all of that is part of creating an authentic, memorable brand. So those are sort of the highlights. And I will share this deck and I will get you some of those individual files so you can work on those on your own. And do you have any questions? Craig, the only one here. So you've got, right. You can ask anything you want.
Well, so just because of it being the last thing, I really liked how you had the signature on there. Mm-hmm. Is as kind of benign as that is to have, and as simple as it probably was, even though I don't know how you do it, but that's the mystery of all that stuff. It really seemed like it was so much more from you as opposed to, you know, generally the company, even though you're the company, but
yeah, I mean, I'm the face of the company, and I feel like it's the ones where there's that personal touch, like my signature,
right?
Then they're like, oh, this is from Laura. It's not a generic. I think people connect more with the posts that are more personal in nature. Mm-hmm. So adding your signature is important. I like that. I've started doing that recently.
Yeah. And how did you do that?
I did it on the iPad. So we have a stylus, so I could just draw it there. But I've done it in the past for clients where, so if this is something you want to do, you just use a thicker, like a Sharpie or something, sign your name. And then if you take a picture of it or scan it, we can convert it into an image, or like a graphic that you can use on your email signature or your blogs, things like that, to make it more personal.
Yeah, because I thought that was the signature, right? Because I talked about that, but I also liked your use of the separation of the sentences, and then the use of bold. It was really limited, and so it wasn't one of those circumstances where everything's really important, so everything's bold, right? Which sometimes happens.
Yeah, I do see that. Yeah, sometimes where people have way too much bolded in a paragraph. It's like half the paragraph is bolded, and it gets very overwhelming. It's very jarring to the eyes.
Right, and so your call to action was, and then the quote in the middle was, and then the rest of it was being emphasized by kind of chunking out and doing a sentence here or a sentence there, or centering something, or
Exactly. Yeah, and it's about type hierarchy. So you want to have your headline one size, your subheadings another size. You can use uppercase and bold, centered and italics. Like, there's different things you can do to make people go, oh, this is a different thing. This is new content. And some people have way too much variation, and some people don't have any at all. So it's about finding that fine line between, enough of a balance between sort of headings and subheadings and content, bold, not, because there might be that one thing you want to highlight, and that's okay. You want to call that out a little bit differently.
And also, when you did it, were you choosing specific fonts? Does Lab Creative have a font that it uses for anything like that, so that there's always the same, or maybe just your website is set up to be a certain font?
Yeah, so our website is set up to use certain fonts. So that's always going to be sort of standard. When it comes to our social media, we've got templates for the fonts and the styling. So if you look at, anything we post with text on it, you'll find that they all have a very similar, like, we use the same fonts, the same style. We use sort of this line divider, so that no matter where you see us, or if you're scrolling from one day to the next, you would recognize our posts that include text. Okay. Yeah. So either, sorry, go ahead.
Because I know you've talked about having consistency, so that when someone's looking at something of yours, that they know right away, at least over time, right away, that that's still you, that's Laura, as opposed to anybody else, whether it's your color scheme, your font scheme.
Yeah. So we're always consistent with the colors and the fonts on our social media, and the blog is typically set up in a similar way from one time to the next. At least one image. If we're doing a feature client, like a before and after, or showing off their new brand, we'll have more images in the post that breaks up the text, because we'll be talking about, the brand foundation work we did at Brand Camp. We'll show off the new logo and, any of the things that we've created, the why, the mood board, all of those things. So that those ones are more case studies, and they're handled a little bit differently. They're just a bit more visual, and people like that as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions?
Thanks. No more. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I know.
Appreciate
Short and sweet today. Yeah. So I'll upload the deck to Facebook and take a look. I'll put together some kind of templates as well to start building out content. And if you want to share what you're working on, let me know. I'd love to see what your thoughts are in some of your monthly themes, and breaking down the content into creating a great content calendar for next year.
Sounds great. Thanks, Laura.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Craig.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Bye.